I don't know. There is a blog entry that talks about how to do it all.
On the Blogspot,
I'm not sure if it's Blogspot. Let me look real quickly.
or the Steve Conger blog.
Yeah, it might be. I think it is Blogspot, but it might be Conger Prep. Let's see, is it Conger? Oh, it's Class Prep. All right, let's just do Blogspot. Because I don't think it's this one, although, let me look real quickly.
What is the class you teach?
Uh, I teach,
Which one is that for right there?
this is for the systems analysis 255.
Oh,
It's Java code.
did you teach that? Oh, you teach systems analysis?
I am, and then I also teach, so that's not what I want. That didn't go where I want.
What are the prereqs for systems analysis?
Oh, not much. I think ITC 110.
Okay.
Maybe the 220. I don't really want to sign in. I'm trying to remember what the other, I think it's, actually, if I went to my other blog, I think, so because I have a blog entry for how to set up all the databases, but I don't think it's in this blog. And I can't remember the name of my other blog. Actually, let me do. Here's another thing we could do. Oh, come on. It's not giving me the. Sometimes it comes up. So that's not me. There's other Steve Congers out there. That's why sometimes it's, yeah. It's interesting.
Like the Seattle Central faculty sconged.
Sconge. You know, that is how they did it, because when I first started here, there was a limit on how many characters.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody had their name. All right, so that didn't work. This is just Alzheimer. Trying to remember. Hands-on database. Let's see, Facebook. Why is it not? Classroom prep. All right. First steps, SQL, the plan, getting. I think this one is called Getting SQL Server. So it talks about getting SQL Server, and then it talks about setting up the databases. So it gets the script from GitHub, and then it also talks about downloading the Metro Alt log and then extracting it.
These are the same things that you have on the 3012, right?
Well, actually, so the Server 12, this is if you wanted to get the SQL Server for yourself, right, and then set it up. So the database we got from GitHub, remember? We went and got the script first day or so. So that's sort of what this is talking about, going to GitHub, into the repository, turning the script to raw, and then pasting it into SQL Server and then running it. And then it shows that it's there. Metro Alt is there's a download of Metro Alt zip, which we had in Canvas, but I have it here at general place to download it.
Seems
then
like a year ago.
It was, well, it's been a couple months. And then how to set it up. So congerprep.blogspot.com. I could post this in the
Since it doesn't exist. I entered that.
what Conger Prep.
Your .blogspot.com. It says, however, the name Conger Prep is available to register. congerprep.blogspot.com. I just entered that.
I got to it.
Congerprep.
I got to it. Thank you.
Oh, Conger, whoops, Conger. There we go.
And then the one at the bottom.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, so that's enough of that. All right, so now that everyone's leaving again. Your virtual machine just failed. Give it another shot. How did it fail?
It just stopped working. Couldn't do it. It was running super slow anyways.
If they're downloading stuff in the background. I don't know if these are protected from that recent cyber attack either.
You don't want to cry?
What was the cyber attack?
Ransomware. That
It's still running.
Yeah.
It like took down NHS in England. Was totally avoidable because Microsoft released a patch for it in like March or something.
Oh, so a bunch of companies that had the first.
They're still using like XP, a lot of them.
Some of them, I mean, like companies don't update right away because it could destroy other software. So they tend to test the updates before they apply them.
Right.
That can be one of your questions when you're bringing to open a new bank account. What version of software you guys
Yeah.
are running, and how up to date is your IT specifications? What?
I was gonna say, I'm sure that bank person knew exactly what you're talking about.
So most banks are actually running Fortran, built in the 90s. It may be more secure than some things, actually. They spent millions of dollars on those databases in the 90s, and they're not going to change until the last thing has died.
Millions of dollars, that's like less than a day's revenue for some of these banks now.
./SQL Express, I think. Now it's possible that it's turned off. Sometimes the service stops. I don't know why they turn off, but sometimes they seem to.
I haven't had that happen.
It shouldn't, at home, and we're going to get started here. I'm kind of doing mass delays to let everybody get set up. But at home, I have never had the service turn off, ever. But I think there must be something that when it starts up, if it feels that there aren't enough reserves, that it doesn't start it. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
I'm not.
You're not? How close are you?
I have no idea.
All right, let's keep it open and then we'll get going.
That's, I mean, I can just follow along too. I just,
Okay.
Can I restart the computer?
Gee, yeah, I already did that. All right, so let's do temporary tables. These are really easy. The first part of this is really easy. The second part, maybe not. So what would a temporary table be, do you think?
A table that is temporary.
All right, yeah, so I'm gonna create a table. And I have no idea what I want to do with this. Let's, before I do this,
You want to use
yeah, I want to use Community Assist. So I'll run that real quickly. And then I'm going to create a temporary table. Let's just say, I just want to give it a name. Let's just do,
temp table.
yeah, we could call it temp table. I'm going to give it a structure. And I'm just going to say, let's just do the person key int person last name in varchar 255, and we'll do their first name and then an email, and that's all. Now it should have an E on it. So it's just like making a table. What makes it a temp table? Can you see the difference?
Hashtag.
The hashtag, yeah. And this is a local, so this is considered a local temp table, which means that basically it only exists in this one session. As soon as the session is over, the temp table goes away. So what is a session here? I'm going to real quickly just insert into temp table. So what we'll insert is basically person key, person last name, person first name, and then person email. Actually, instead of values, I'm going to do select those same things. Person key, person last name, and just want some data in it. Person first name. From person. And I'm then just going to say where. Actually, let's just leave it. Let's just do that. So I created the table, right? Yeah, so 133 rows are done. And so there's a temp table here, and we can select it. And it will have all of that. So what would you want temp tables for? Anybody have any ideas?
Data that you only need in the short term and not the long term.
Well, it could be. So one of the things you might want to do is if you're doing a complicated query, rather than write a really long thing where you go through lots of steps, you might first write do a query that puts it into a temp table. Then you could query the temp table and add, so you could create some steps for a long, complicated calculation, and you could create some temporary tables. You can make your query a lot easier, where you don't have to do so many inner joins. And does that make sense? So you could do, a query of query of a query of a query, and you can store some of the intermediate things in temp tables. Another common use is if you need to change the table. You need to alter the table. When you alter a table with data in it, you basically lose the data for any field that you alter.
This will be here.
Yeah, so what you could do is you could copy it over to a temp table, make your alterations, and then copy it back. Does that make sense? So that's another use for a temp table. Now, I said that it's only good in this session. This window is considered a session at this point. One of the things you can see is down here, there's SQL Express, Steve 52. 52 is the process. Does that make sense? Down in the yellow. So it says local SQL Express 12 and then SQL Express / Steve 52. 52 is the process ID. This is actually useful more for like some of the summer classes. You can kill processes if you want, if you know their ID. Which if somebody does a infinite loop or something, you might want to. There's ways to create a trying to remember what the hard lock, where you basically locked everyone out of the data table. So I'm going to open another query. Now notice that this has a process ID of 53. If I try to select from that temp table, it will fail because it doesn't exist in this session. It only exists in the other session. And as soon as I leave this session, like if I were to close this window, the temp table would be gone. Thanks.
Along with all the data.
Along with all the data in it, yes. So a temp table here is only good for while this session is in place. And most of the time that's fine. I mean, you just keep it,
What did you say that the common applications are for?
What?
What are the common applications you use this for?
So one of the things would be sometimes when you're doing really complex queries or analysis, it's useful to store data in temp tables along the way just so that you can write simpler queries. You have intermediate stages.
While preserving.
While preserving, yeah. Well, there's that, or just, you can query each stage, and it can be easier than trying to do all of those queries into a single complicated statement. Another reason is, again, if you have to drop and change a table, you can copy the data over to preserve it while you make your changes and then copy the data back. Temp tables occur all the time. SQL Server creates them to do certain kinds of queries and stuff, but you don't see them because they happen really quickly and they're invisible. They go away, but you can make your own. And again, this has the duration of this session. As long as this window is open, that temp table will exist. As soon as I close it or move to another, it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it doesn't exist for this process. It does for this one.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool, and it actually can be quite useful. Yeah.
So it's the hashtag.
The hashtag is what makes it a temp table. Yeah. Now, there's another form of temp table. So I'm just going to copy this because I am lazy, but I'm going to change it. I'm going to do a double $, and I'm going to call it temp table 2. And I'll just make this. And I'm going to, I'll copy this too. It'd probably be better to make a new one, but so what do you think the double $sign does?
Makes it extra temporary.
Actually, kind of the opposite. Oh, so I already made that one. So
Makes it accessible to the other.
it makes it accessible to the other logins. So
But temporarily.
temporarily, right? It isn't actually written to your data file, right? Once all of the logins are closed, then it's gone. But it does make it available across sessions. So if I make this with a double and a 2, I should be able to access it, right, in another session.
Does it show up with the IntelliSense?
No. I mean, maybe if I updated the IntelliSense. One of the places where you can see these things, see if I can, if I go to Community Assist, actually not Community Assist, if I go to System Databases, Temp, Tables, Temporary Tables, notice I've got 2
Nice.
available here.
So more than likely, if you refresh the IntelliSense right now, it would show up.
It should show up, yeah. But once I close these out, then these will go away. So the temp database, I think I mentioned this like on day 1,
Yeah.
is where all your Scratch files go, basically. And most of them are generated by SQL Server itself, but you can also use it to store temporary things. Again, because they're temporary, they will go away as soon as we close out of the session.
So that's like it'll delete anything in there.
Yeah,
automatically when it
yeah.
closes.
So when you say close it, it's like closing the program, the query window.
Say again.
When you say close it,
So if I were to close these 2,
okay,
then they would go away. If all the sessions are gone, these are gone. They're only alive in terms of these sessions, right?
so we cannot see those results.
Not if I closed out and came back, they would be gone, for sure. And if I close, like this one is really only visible here. Not sure what that long
Can you
line
save that?
is.
Could you save that right there just by clicking on it? As a different name?
You could, I don't know if you could save it as a different name. I don't think so. I mean, the whole point of a temp table is that it's temporary.
Right. Yeah. Just curious.
So this is a global temporary, and it's global because it crosses sessions. And then this one is this one is the one above it, is just a local to the one session. It's invisible to other sessions. So the global one would be good if multiple people were working simultaneously on the same temp table. Does that make sense? I would say you'd probably use this one most often, though. And you may never use one, but they are useful when you need them. And as I said, it's typically when you have a multi-stage problem that it's easier to solve it by saving the intermediate stages, or when you need to preserve your data while you make changes to an existing table. Because if you make some of you might remember from ITC 220 when you're using the GUI and you tried to make a change onto a table, it says you cannot make changes that require dropping the table. You can undo that. But by default, a lot of the changes, if you have to do them, it means that the data goes away.
This way you could.
Yeah, this way you can preserve the data. Okay, so that's temp tables.
Sorry, I zoned out there. So 2 hash marks preserves your data.
It doesn't actually, I mean, you could preserve it temporarily. It's still a temporary table. The 2 hash marks means that it's available across sessions, whereas the 1 hash mark, it's temporary, but it's only available in a single session, one where it was made. Does that make sense?
So double hash basically makes it global.
The double hash makes it global, yeah. The only difference between these and any other table, so the pound sign or the hash sign here, temporary, local to the session, one session. Temporary but global, meaning that other sessions that are active can see it. Now, if I did a third new query, they could still see it because the other sessions are still active, right? If I closed out all of the sessions, then it would go away. But I could add sessions, and for the double one, still hasn't updated, but I can still see it there, right? And again, because I'm in a different thing, I cannot see the single pound sign without the two. That is going to be utterly invisible to this. But this one, it crosses sessions. Now, I would show you that it goes away. I guess I could show you. I don't want to lose everything here. So I am going to do, it's a little bit dangerous, but just for double insurance.
So you didn't just say the temporary work.
Yeah, I did. Well, no, I saved the SQL in the window. All right, so if I update this, they're gone. And when I do a new query, even the global one, can't do it. Select. This will fail too. Oh, I'm in TempDB too. I need to, I'm going to cheat. Okay. So it doesn't see it. They're all gone. So I pasted it back in. So what the single one is one window, one session. The global one is for all open sessions, and if you open new sessions while the original one is open, it still will add it. But once all those sessions are closed, it's gone. Right, so they're both temporary tables. They don't actually write to disk. They're just there when you need to store something for a little bit. Right? And again, sometimes I don't think we're ever going to write something that complicated here, but there are times when it's really useful to store temporary states. You know, you've got to a point in your query, store it as a table, do some more calculations, maybe store the interim results. And probably more common than that is to preserve something while you have to adjust the table. All right, so I think I should go look at the actual assignment, but I think the next thing is to talk about our functions. Does anybody have the assignment up? So there's the next stuff is functions.
Yep.
Nothing in between. I was thinking that was correct.
Notice that do the same except on the global temp tables.
Yeah, so we did the temp tables and then global temp. So let's do, I'm going to show you how to do some functions where we write our own functions. And I do want to say, all right, so you can write SQL functions in SQL Server, and you can write them in Oracle. You cannot write them in MySQL unless you do them in C++. You can actually write them in C++ here too, but we're not going to. You can write them in C# as well, but also we're not going to. We're going to do SQL functions. We did a function before. Do you remember last week we did the table valued function?
We also have the aggregate scale and system functions.
Right. We're not going to do aggregate. We're going to do the scalar ones. The reason why we're not going to do an aggregate is that actually also even here has to be done in C++ or C#. Functions are
Which one of those two is better for SQL?
so for SQL Server, C# is probably easier. C++ works because actually I think underneath it all, I'm pretty sure that SQL Server is written in C++. Yeah. What you have to do for an aggregate function is you have to extend SQL Server. You have to add some more code to the, and there's other ways you can do that. It's actually a lot of neat stuff you can do in terms of extending it, but that's a kind of an advanced topic. So when you create a function, we did this before, and these will be, everything that we're going to do is a scalar function. Anybody remember what scalar means in this context? What? Yeah, we're just returning one value, and it'll be for every line, right? It's not grouping things together. It's not grouping lines together. So it's just going to be basically it's just going to return a value. It's kind of like an Excel function or something like that. Now, there are a lot of built-in functions. We looked at those before, right? If we go to programmability and we look at, so there's stored procedures, which will be not today or even this week probably, but next. Then there's functions. And in here, there's table valued functions. And we did a table valued function. We did. Why do I not have it? Oh, well. Scalar valued functions. Oh, that's because I'm in temp database. Let's go to community assist. Programmability. Functions. Taylor, see, we did that get cities. Remember we did that table valued one. There are a couple of scalar values here that I wrote for the database. The get the random seed and this one hashes the password. So those two are there that I wrote. Aggregate functions, there aren't any there, except that if you look at the system functions, and there are a lot of system functions. Probably well over 100 of them. So why would you write your own functions when you got all of those? There are times when you want to do something that's unique to your database. Like you might want to calculate your final tax cost, all of that, and like if you were doing a receipt out of the database. And those calculations would be fairly, unique to your database. There are other things you might want to calculate that are unique to the database. For the most part, these functions will be database specific. They're not going to, I'm not even sure how to save them as a system data function. But so they're database specific. Does that make sense? I'm going to start off by showing a really stupid function that you would never write, but just to show the syntax. So I'm going to create function. I'll call it fx cube. We're just going to cube a number. There's no reason to write this. There's already a power function in there. But we're going to do this. And I'm going to do a parentheses. And it's going to take an int. And I'll call it number. And it should have an at in front of it. So this is the parameter that you're passing in. You guys know how when you usually have a function, you give it a number and it does something to it. I'm going to also say returns int, as I said, this is to show kind of the pattern of a as begin. What's the dot like as int at number? Oh, I know what it is. Okay. And that's begin, not begging. And I'm going to be more verbose than I need to be. I'm going to do declare at cube int at cube or set at cube equals at number times at number times at number. And then I'm going to do return cube at cube. And then I'm going to do end. So, and then if I do a go up here, it'll like the first line. So this is just to show the basic pattern. As I said, it's a stupid function. Why would you ever do this? And there isn't a good reason to do this, but it shows the basic pattern. You create a function, you give it a name, right? And then you have any parameters that you need, numbers or things that you have to pass in. So I'm going to pass in just a integer. If there's other numbers, you just do a comma and do that. Again, all variables have to have an at sign in front of them, right? The variables and parameters. Down here, I declared at cube. I declared a variable. I set a value for it, which is just this number times itself 3 times, and then I returned that value. When I said I was being verbose, I just wanted to show you how to do declare, setup, and I'll show you how to do ifs and things later too. I could have just said return at number times that number times that number, right? I didn't have to declare cube, but I wanted to show you how to do that. So when I make this function, so I'm just going to execute that. And it just says it was successful. If I right click over here and refresh, I now have a cube function. And the way you use it is just like you would use any function. So I'm going to do a go so it doesn't get unhappy. And then I'm going to do select, what do we want to cube? We could do it just a literal number. Like I could just put in 4. And I do need to say DBO. That actually should work. That should work. Why is it not happy?
Is it FX cube instead of?
Oh, yes, yes, I have to spell it right. And it doesn't have an at. My brain is gone. FX. It does need the DBO. Okay, so it gives you 64, right? We could also do, I'm just trying to think of what's an integer that I could cube in Community Assist.
Employee key, or would that be disastrous?
Well, it wouldn't matter. We could do that. So I'm going to do, let's just do employee. So let's do employee key. This, because it's a select, it's not going to affect the underlying table. It's just a meaningless thing to do. So you can pass in a field name, right? And so it did one of the cube of 1 is 1, the cube of 2 is 8, the cube of 3 is 27, the cube of 4 is 64, 5 is 125, 6 is 260.
It says cube of everything is, oh, oops, this is nice.
So as I said, it's not a very useful function, but it kind of shows the structure of the function. A couple of other things I want to mention before we do something more complicated. So we pass in the parameters in parentheses, and again, there could be as many as you need. You have to say what it returns. Notice it has an S. We did this again with the other one said returns table. This one returns an int. Right? And then we need to say the as. So as is like an alias. You could argue, I guess, that all of this is sort of an alias for this. And in these, the scalar functions still require a begin and end. These are kind of like curly braces. Right? They're just verbal curly braces here. They can, when we do stored procedures, they can get quite annoying because you can have nested begins and ends. And for whatever reason, I find curly braces much easier to read. We declare a variable, which again, you don't necessarily, but the variables internally are different than the variables that you pass in as parameters. This one will be given its value internally. This one is passed in as a number as well. And then you have to have a return. Just as a returns, you have to, this is the actual return, and it has to have that type. Right? It has to be of the integer type. Or it could be a double. Whatever your return type is, this has to match. Does that make sense? I don't want to do the email one for you, so let me think if I can think of another function here. I'll do one similar. Let's do this from person. And what we'll return is their last name, first name, and email, and we'll return it as a single string. Which is sort of a silly thing to do too. But I'm trying to think, but it could create kind of an email list for you, I guess.
Last name, first name.
Yeah, last name, first name, and email, I think. Just concatenate them in the function.
What's entry date, first entry date?
That's the date that they were entered into the database.
First name, last name, and entry date.
Yeah, we could do that. I'm trying to think we could do that. Let's do that real quick.
Because those all should be different. They should be groups, maybe that.
I'm not sure they are all different. Let's do a select star from.
But in the real world, they would.
Yeah.
She would think she would add everybody else. And again, if somebody had to create the database with it, show.
There's a lot of them that are 2013-8. There's some differences there, but they're not. Part of it depends. I think when I did a lot of the entries, so I just had a get date there. So there's a.
Yeah.
Let me look real quickly. So this one actually I want to do. this one. I just want to look at what I did last time for an example, because I want to show you how to do if statements and a couple of other things. So we need to do, well, actually I know one. We can do the concatenation one too, but let's say, oh, that isn't all that exciting either. Trying to think of, all right, so let's go back. So I said when I have a discombobulated morning, it comes back to, so this would probably have been like in February, temp tables and functions. There's cube. I did an online address, yeah. We can do that. Oh, okay, so that makes sense, because it gives you the concatenation and I can do an if statement. So let's do a function that returns basically an address. So I'm going to create function. I'm curious, what did I bring in their names too for that? No, I just did their a one-line address. Okay. So create function, we'll call it fx. I'm just going to call it address. And we're going to take in some, I'm going to do like at address, which would be in varchar 255. One of the things I want to really remind you of, because it's a common problem I've seen with these, is if you don't give this a size, you get a size of 1. And that's all the character that will display. If you end up down at the bottom and all you get are 1 characters for each of these, that means you didn't put a value in there.
You'll get it. I got an error when you run it.
Yeah, that's a possibility
Say,
because
you
it was
know, the
overflowing.
value's too big.
I think I've done that a few times.
Be nice if it would return
I
just
know.
one, the first character.
So I'm going to do add apartment, which not everybody has, right? So I'm going to do that as in varchar 255. I've seen them run with just 1 character. It's unreadable what you get, but I'm going to do, let's see, at city. So we have to provide all of these arguments. I'm going to do one other, which is there a state in there? Person address. Yeah, there's a state. So I guess we could do state and zip. Actually, I did state as, that was always a mistake. I meant to do it as 2, but anyway. If I don't match the size, it may complain. Yeah. And I don't know why I gave it 255 either. Anyway, so I'm going to close the parentheses for that. I'm going to say that it returns in varchar 255 and as, and then I'm going to do a begin. And what we're going to do is we're going to just concatenate all of that and return. Again, it's unhappy because it wants to go. So I'm just going to declare at, what would we want to do it? Complete. I'll just call it complete. and I'll make it in var car 255. And I'm going to, so apartment can be null, right? So I'm going to just do if at apartment, can't spell, is null. And I'm going to do a begin and an end for that. As I said, they're just like curly braces. And if you want, it doesn't hurt to do some indentation.
Would you just?
I just use the space bar. Yeah. So if it's null, I'm going to say at complete, not hash, at complete equals at address plus, and I'm actually going to, it needs to have be single space here. I'm going to put a space there. Plus, so it'd actually probably be a comma, right? Because it's going straight to city. Plus at city, I'm glad it's not case sensitive. Plus space. Is there a, I'm trying to remember, at state. Plus, I don't really want to do those double quotes. Plus at zip.
There's a comma after city.
Okay. Is that correct?
I don't think there's one after address though.
Isn't there one between address and city? If not, we could do
I
that.
never do it on the same line. So.
Yeah. Oh, I have to say set. Okay, so that we left out apartment, right? So I'm going to do else, and I'll do begin and end, and let's indent those a little bit. Capitalization doesn't matter, but I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to add the apartment in. So address plus plus empty space. If you don't concatenate in the spaces, you get no space, right? Return at complete. And then I'll just do end. Okay. So let's see if I can get the whole thing in there. So we have, I don't have everything in there. I guess if I lower this a little bit more. Almost. It's just hard to get it in there. So we create the function. We give it all the parameters that we want to pass in. It always begins with as and begin. Well, first we have to say what we're returning, right? And then I declared an internal variable. And then what I did is if the apartment is null, we leave it out. If the apartment is not null, we add it in. And then we return the string. So this does the concatenation. Does that make sense?
The if always goes before the else.
Yes. So if, I mean, I could do it the opposite. I could say if apartment is not null, And then
Yeah.
we could do that. I mean, that would be fun. But the else is always,
Else.
yeah. And there is else if also if you want.
Else if there's.
There is an else if. It's if you need like a block of if statements.
Okay.
This is actually where you're starting to get into something that's resembling programming a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm getting else statements. That sounds more.
There's also loops, although I don't think I have any examples where we use loops, but you can do a while loop.
Can you do arrays as well?
I don't think so.
There's just no point in doing it in the right for the database.
I don't know that you can't though. I'll look. So I'm going to execute that. So again, what it does is it just puts it in programmability under scalar valued functions. If I refresh that, there's now FX address. And what I'll do is I'll just we'll run this function and we'll see what the result looks like. Again, I'm not sure this is one that you would really want to do. So I'm going to just select, and I will do like, let's do person last name. Person first name. And then I'm going to do the DBO FX address, which isn't in there yet. And then I am going to put in person, actually, I'm going to cheat, I think. I'm going to bring this down. Laziness, I'm going to go to the table, person address. I'm going to bring in the columns. And I will take out the person address key. I'm going to just break these down so that they're all on screen. A person key can go away. Okay, so I'm passing in all those things. So I'm going to say from person. And I'm going to do the inner join with person address. P.person key equals PA.person key. Okay, so we have the match. That would probably work just in and of itself. It's kind of ugly on the screen there, but let's see how it looks. Oh, I didn't give it a column name.
That's okay. You know it's supposed to be.
There are some people that have no addresses? That isn't right.
Isn't that a non-null?
I think we may need to adjust our thing. Because I think what's happening is if the apartment is null, it's nulling everything out. Why is it doing that? If that apartment is null, equals address, city, state, city. Else, why is that giving us? So it should be only if apartment is null. Did anybody see any logic problems in mine? That should work, but it's giving, if there isn't an apartment, it's giving it just as a null. If at apartment is null. I don't know that should, the else should work. Still doing it. If at apartment is null,
Is it about the column? That means the column says person address street instead of the address.
where
We need to input a column to the function.
so we do address
This
apartment.
is the address street in the person address column.
I'm not, well, actually, it shouldn't matter what the variable names don't have to match the fields. They do have to match the sequence. So we got address, apartment, city, state, zip. Address, we skipped that. City, at, stick, and then zip. That should be good. Complete address, apartment, city, state, zip. Why is it nulling out? If apartment is null, it's returning a null, which is not what it's supposed to do.
Is that end creating some problem?
What?
Is that end over, is this creating problem? Like,
Well, this should be just for this if.
so that can be case, like, it's not going below. Is that something?
Why?
Like
Oh, it doesn't end, it doesn't end,
is that for only that first if sequence?
it's only for the if statement. This end is for the function. These are like curly braces for the if. I just don't understand why it's nulling out. It's the, if these are null, if apartment is null, it's just nulling everything out. It's only returning the ones with apartments. I changed this to an if to see if that made a difference, but it doesn't. As begin, declare if apartment is null. I'm going to reverse this. And I'll change this to else. And then get rid of this and see if that makes any difference. This time it maybe will return everybody. Go and then I have to notice how I altered the function. If you make changes to it, you have to alter it. All right, so and then if I run this, what do I get? Same thing. There's something about the null there. It does this, but it's turning everything else into nulls. That looks exactly the same. I'm going to do an alternate version of this and see what happens here. I think I left out the last in. So I just copied the one from the blog. It looks to me identical to the other one. And this would be FX1 line. It doesn't look like it wrote yet. Online address. Execute. Oh, I didn't, for that, I didn't copy everything. Return that address. I hate selecting in here. Might be on. Okay. And that works. Why does that work and the other one not?
Just the way it is. It is what it is.
That's weird. What is the difference between those two? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but so set address street address equals at street city state zip. Set address equals street apartment city state and zip. Wait. Return address if apartment is null. That's exactly what I had done before. I changed it. I flipped it to is not null, but it set at complete equals address plus apartment plus city, state, and zip. I see no difference, and yet this one works and that one doesn't. That is so weird.
Remove that one that doesn't work.
Yeah, should I remove it or should I just comment it out? Let me comment it just so that you can.
This one doesn't work.
To me, they look identical. Am I missing something? So I'll leave that commented out. But I'll leave it there because maybe you guys can see what the difference is, if there is any difference. I just don't see any difference whatsoever. There's a difference in the name of the variable, but that shouldn't matter.
I think if else is not working properly, if else won't work.
Yeah, but this one has
Because every time it is executing only one condition, right?
right. But this one is identical, really, to what I first had. If apartment is null, and then else, and if that one works.
Yeah, looks like correct to me as well. Sure.
This one is working, and I don't know why it, because there's no difference between it and the other one.
Yeah,
That's
maybe we can look at.
I left it there so we can look.
Yeah.
There has to be a difference. I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's not visible.
I mean, originally this was is null. It was exactly like the other one. I flipped it to see if it make a difference, and it didn't. So I don't know. I'll look at it. I'll leave it there commented. I want to do one more function that's kind of a numerical. So when you're doing the email address, it'll be similar. right? It'll be last name concatenated with first name plus at metro.alt. Or metroalt.com, rather. I will post these too, but do you have a question, Eli?
Street address, set street address.
Yeah, so this is my original one. I did that as address, and this one it's street, the one I took from the blog. So address is a variable that I declared right up here, and it's going to store the whole address as a string. So address equals street plus comma plus city plus comma plus state plus an empty space plus zip. That's if the apartment is null. If there is an apartment, then it includes the apartment in the string. So the if is just testing to see whether or not the apartment is null, because a lot of places don't have an apartment number.
Can you show me one on that, on your table where it has one for the apartment on it?
So, like where it says suite,
756.
yeah.
Apartment 314.
Yeah.
Maybe there should be a comma there.
Yeah, there may be,
70,
should be.
Comma, Westlake, yeah, I think there should, indicating that it dropped down to another line.
Yeah, typically. I mean, we could put a, actually interesting. So let's put a, if we altered it, we could put a comma there. I don't know if that'll make it more, it might make it more readable. When you make a change, it won't go unless you redo the whole.
Or use alter.
Yeah, you have to do alter. You could either drop it and then rerun it, or you can do alter. And then this one should give us, the only difference here will be there will be a comma.
Yep.
Yeah.
5A.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Interestingly, it doesn't know it once I've altered it.
Sometimes they'll tell us that the red
That's good,
squiggly
French.
lines are wrong.
Yeah.
We'll say, this is a problem, I'll execute it and execute it.
So it was Control Shift A?
Control Shift A. Control Shift R.
Is it Control Shift R?
So that's, it's
F5 runs. It's Control Shift R. It just updated. All right, one last function. So let's do, this is a little bit different than what I did before, but this one actually would be useful. Why don't we check to see if a request is greater than the maximum amount for that request? All right. So typically I would probably do this in a trigger, but let's do it here. So we'll do create function, and I'll do fx. What do we want to call it? Test request amount, max request, whatever.
Request max.
That sounds good. So what we need to do here, there's two arguments that we really need. We need the grant type. And I'm just going to go with the grant type key. If you want, you can actually do that, and then int. And then we need the request amount at request amount. And I think the request amount was money. Grant request, columns, yeah, money. Okay, so we're going to do that. It's going to, what is it that we're going to return?
Is this mirroring question 5?
Might be. I don't remember what question 5 is. I wanted one, so I know that there's a numeric one where you do some calculations. As I recall, the function that I have you calculate is like a to figure out a new wage for a new person. And it's a ridiculously stupid calculation. It's just to give you something to calculate. Nobody would, basically what you do is you give them, a new person gets a salary halfway between the highest and the lowest. That's sort of the idea of it. It's not a way anyone would assign us.
That's no. You come in at the current minimum for that position.
Yeah.
Unless
Although
you-
sometimes you can, yeah, sometimes you can bargain up.
You got a lot of.
So the question is, what do we want to return here? We're testing to see if the request amount is,
Max?
yeah, less than max. We could return the difference, I guess. Let's return money. What I'm thinking is we could return the, if it's less than it, it'll come back as a positive number. If it's more than, it'll come back as a negative number. I'm not sure if that's how we'd really want to do it, but one of the things that should happen that is not happening here, and this is true of a lot of things, is you should think about it beforehand. So what I'm going to do is basically we're just going to test. We need to get the request, so the request amount and the grant type key. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to get the max. So I'm going to declare at max, and it will be money also. I am going to select at max from, so at max equals, and let's look at grant type. So equals grant type maximum from grant type, and in where, just do that on the next line, where grant type key equals at grant type key. Does that make sense? So we're going to return, one of the neat things you can do is you can do a select to assign a variable, a value. And we're going to select the grant type maximum from grant type, where the grant type key is equal to the key that they enter in there. So, you know, basically, so if they enter in 1, it's food. If they enter in 2, it's rent, right? So it'll look for their grant type maximum for that particular type of grant. And it'll select it from the underlying table.
I got an error.
Well, it won't run yet. So I'm going to then say, we actually probably don't need an if we're just going to return the difference. So let's do declare at difference money. And then I'm going to say that set at difference equals grant. Actually, so it would be at max minus at request amount. So the idea is it'll be, if they're above the max, it'll return a negative for how much they're over. And if they're under, it'll return a whole number for how much left they could have. Again, I'm not sure. What is it not like about set at difference?
maybe it doesn't like difference.
Did I spell it differ? Oh,
Yeah, you
yes, I spelled it differently. All right. So then I'm going to return at difference.
I was just trying to be sarcastic there too.
And end. Does that make sense? So one of the things I wanted to show you, because I think you need to do it, is how to pull a value from the database and assign it to a variable. So if I do I guess we could do this for the whole table. Select grant request key, grant request date. Okay, and then I'm going to do, let's actually return the grant request amount. And I'm going to do a couple, and then I'm going to do the DBO dot request max, and we'll pass in the grant type key and the grant request amount. Difference is a keyword. From grant request. So we're going to do it for everybody. Cannot find the column DBO. Did I make the function? Did I spell it wrong? Yes, I forgot the FX. Okay, so if it's a whole number, then they're asking less than the max. If it's a minus, they're asking more than the max. Does that make sense?
Based on the key.
Based on the key. And the key is the type, right? Because each type has its own max. Most of them are under, but there are a few, that are over the amount. I don't think I ever enforced that in the database. I'm going to show you how to enforce it with a trigger, I think. But is there anything in the assignment that I really haven't covered? These can be kind of fun, and they can actually make it easier when you're working with a database. Once you've created these functions, that's a query you never have to do again, right? You can just use the function, apply the function wherever you need it.
Some temporary tables and functions.
Yeah. I don't think I had you make too many. I had you make a couple of silly functions in the sense that they're not necessarily useful.
Yeah, there's only 3.
Yeah, because I figured it's going to take a while. I mean, it's kind of a step up in terms of figuring out how things work. If you've done a lot of programming, this should be really familiar, except for a little awkward. The beginning and endings are awkward as opposed to curly braces, but the concepts are essentially the same.
I think they should change all the curly braces to begin with.
So does SQL constitute a programming language, or is it in the league of its own?
It is a programming language. It's considered a 4th generation programming language. And again, the reason it's a 4th generation is that generally you don't do much of this kind of stuff. Generally, it's just you say what you want and it'll retrieve it. Whereas in a regular programming language, you have to say step by step how to do it. Here you don't say how to do it, you just say what you want done. right? You just say, I want to select these things from this table. In C++, which is actually what happens underneath, you would have to go find the table, loop through the values, compare each value to the criteria, and then store them in some sort of structure and present them back. That's actually what happens underneath. But with SQL, you don't have to do that. It's a higher level of abstraction. Ultimately, they really are working towards programming languages that are nothing but drag and drop and add a couple of lines of code to tie things together.
Yep.
That sounds kind of boring.
Yeah, but for companies, maybe it's not so much fun for programmers, but for companies, it would be much more.
Makes the programming salaries go down.
Yeah, I mean, the most expensive part of most software is programming and the programmers.
And if the boss or several people, layers underneath the CEO can do it, why do you need to hire a bunch of programmers?
And programmers make 80 to 100 bucks an hour on a high level. So if you can, although there'll still need people to write the contents of those boxes that you're dragging and dropping. So there's always, I think will always be, just kind of like with the robots, there's always jobs for people that have to program and edit the programming of the robots. It's just the people that were doing what the robots are doing that don't have jobs.
Be able to tell Siri or Google or whatever bot to write your program.
Well, they do. I mean, actually, it's amazing in Visual Studio right now how many things are just written for you. You know, so.
Shoot, didn't Google's AI just recently write its own encryption?
It might have.
And by recently, I mean maybe in the last 6
Doesn't need to
to
take
9 months.
breaks, doesn't drink coffee, doesn't eat.
Doesn't complain. Doesn't have a union contract. Did you have a question, Eli, on this? I'm going to post it in just a moment, which will help. I know it's not the same. It's hard to see from there.
I got a error with
I could take a look at it quickly. They're thinking about that, maybe.
So basically, we just took all my classes, study for the next, so I'm gonna see if they let me to an independent study or something. Well, they have a ITC 299 is an independent study course, but it's for the computer information systems. So I was gonna see if whoever's taking that class would be willing to be sort of like the advisor or mentor or me to and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically institution and everything about this is
Although it would free up a lot of time, so I could work on it. That means I have to come back from Europe early.
Oh, you're in Europe?
Yeah.
Nice, where you going?
Basically, I'll land in Copenhagen, and then I'll fly over to Dublin, and then I'm gonna fly back into Germany and send a.
All right, so let me.
We're in Germany.
Berlin and Munich.
Right on.
I'm very jealous.
Then I'll go
So
down
I am
to-
going to stop the video.
Wow.
I will